His Excellency Sheikh Khalifa bin Ahmed Al Khalifa, President of the Bahrain Authority for Cultural Antiquities, His Excellency the Ambassador of Great Britain, His Excellency the Ambassador of India and Thailand, Her Excellency the Ambassador of Sri Lanka to the Kingdom of Bahrain, Madam, other diplomatic dignitaries in this audience, sirs and dear friends. First of all, it is a great honor for me to be here on this occasion. The two regions, which are the Middle East, where the region you are living in, and Sri Lanka, when I came from, share a common sea and lived throughout history in a single continental mass. More or less, during the past 5,000 years, we have shared our cultures in different scales and as well as in distinct intensities. My objective of being here today to address this distinguished audience is to make an appreciation symbolically for the memory of that prolonged benevolent relationship we maintained for centuries in the past. I must be grateful to Mrs. R.W. Mendes, Her Excellency the Ambassador of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka to the Kingdom of Bahrain, who organized this event timely and perfectly and made my visit to the Kingdom of Bahrain a reality. We get to know about the Middle East by its historical designation as it called the West Asia. The geopolitical entity of West Asia comprised a broad cluster of nations in the Gulf region throughout its historical trajectory. It includes the modern state of Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Bahrain, Oman, Qatar, and Yemen. The progenitors of the ancient Middle Eastern world had tended to dominate the sea faring in the Indian Ocean while linking the Red Sea, while forming a broad network of trade and commerce in the Indian Ocean region. Subsequently, it became central area to the East-West trade network designated by the economic anthropologist as Afro-Eurasian World System. Sri Lanka has played a pivotal role in the Afro-Eurasian World System since very early times, especially due to its strategic geographical location in the Indian Ocean, trade network, and the richness of having undeniable natural resources that had a crucial importance in international trade. Sri Lanka became one of the favorable destinations for merchants in the Indian Ocean waters. So they did not forget the grandeur of the island of Ceylon or Serendip as they call it. A rich corpus of literary notices and memories kept by the ancient Arab sailors and geographers provides us with a reliable source of information that helps to reconstruct the historical relationship held between Sri Lanka and the Middle Eastern world for centuries. If we think, irrespective of the conciseness of their descriptions, such authors had reported extremely valuable information about physiography, natural resources, and the people in Serendip. Most of the enthusiastic Arab travelers who were interested in Sri Lanka and its trade commodities were the people who departed from the major pre-modern seaports in Middle East like Siraf, Oman, and Basra. Among the early Islamic Arab travelers who sailed to India in the 9th century was Suleiman al-Tajir. He was a merchant and traveler from Siraf in modern-day Iran. He made several voyages from the Persian Gulf to the Malabar and Coromandel Coast and China, and he wrote an account of his voyages around 850 AD. Suleiman's description of Sri Lanka is contained in Sisilat al-Tawarik, a literary work later edited and printed in Paris in 1811. Suleiman al-Tajir was the first Arabic Islamic explorer who cited the location and the resources of Sri Lanka to a great precision. Abul Hasan Ali bin Ali Masudi is one of the other Islamic Arabic writers who described Sri Lanka in 950 AD. The accuracy of his description is marked by his explanation of a royal funeral he observed during the time of his presence in Sri Lanka. Not least, there is a long list of names of Arab writers who kept myriad descriptions about Sri Lanka. Some of them on that list are Abu Said Hassan al-Sirafi in the 10th century, al-Batani Abu Abdullah in the 9th century, Sinbad in the same century, Ibn Qurdabeh, Ibn Wahab, Ibn Rushta, al-Stari, and al-Biruni. In 1154 AD, Al-Idrisi drew a map of Sri Lanka. He also described various aspects of Sri Lanka, including commercial commodities, the king of Sri Lanka, and the commercial towns he observed. The other Islamic Arab traveler is Ibn Battuta. Abu Abdullah Muhammad Ibn Battuta reached Sri Lanka in 1344 AD and visited Sripada or Adam's Peak. It's a mountain venerated by several ethnicities, including the Islamic devotees. He is the last West Asian who furnished a plethora of information with regard to Sri Lanka. All those historical records show how the wise sailors and the intelligent Arabic explorers kept the memory of this tiny island in the far distance in the Indian Ocean called Sarandip or Serendip. There were many reasons to keep interest about Sri Lanka by the Middle Eastern traders. The foremost among them is, as mentioned once above, the strategic geographic position connecting the maritime trade network from Red Sea to Persian Gulf, West Asia, India, and to Far Eastern countries as well. The multicultural civilization and the highly developed internal social system are other reasons that helped rising trade centers come ports, not only along the sea coast, but also in several places in the inland of the country. The inestimable trade items that I have borne in Sri Lanka, such as precious gems and pearls, elephant tusks, tortoise shells, expensive timber, and cloth materials, attracted the Middle Eastern traders. There were other highly competitive exports from Sri Lanka, including clove, nutmeg, cinnamon, pepper, and cardamom. The relationship between Sri Lanka and the Middle Eastern countries held even before the rise of Islam. In that period, Persians were the superpower in the long-distance trade in the Indian Ocean. Persian ships frequently sailed to Indian ports like Broch in Gujarat and to Matota in Sri Lanka. At that time, one of the major exports was the energetic horses from Persia. As mentioned in one of the Chinese historical sources, it is interesting to note that in 380 AD, a Persian king asked the daughter of the contemporary king of Sri Lanka and sent a gold bracelet as a present to her. In the 5th century AD, There was an ambassador of Sasanian emperor in the royal court in Anuradhapura, which was the capital of Sri Lanka for nearly millennium since 450 BC. It is explicit that Sri Lankan rulers in history paid a keen interest in maintaining benevolent foreign policy with the Middle Eastern countries right through the ages. Many examples could be cited to elaborate on the prevalence of such relations. Al-Biruni has described a diplomatic mission dispatched by the contemporary Sri Lankan king to the Sasanian emperor Khusro Nushirwan along with 10 elephants, 2,500 pieces of teak wood, and 7 divers of pearl fisheries. In the 7th century AD, the Islamic political cum religious revolution, based on the principle of equality, that swept across Arabia and opened a new chapter in the world history. Very soon, parts of the world stretching from Spain to Arabia and from Arabia to China, Persia, and Sindh in the Indian subcontinent came under the influence of revolutionary wave of Islam. It was the period that the early presence of Islamic Arabs was discernible in Sri Lanka. It is exciting to note that at the outset of knowing about the Islamic religion, Sri Lankan rulers were eagerly curious to know about that doctrine. A fascinating story related to this has been reported by Ibn Sayyar in his work titled Ajib al-Hind, written in 953 AD. This book provides the following description that is a story worth to listen. I quote, "When the people of Serendip and the surrounding area came to know of the appearance of the Prophet of Islam and his message, then they delegated an intelligent person from among themselves and sent him to Arabia to meet him to get information about him and give a first-hand report to his people. When the delegation reached Medina, after a hazardous and long journey, the Prophet had been demised and the caliphate of his successor Abu Bakr and Umar was the caliph. The messenger met the caliph and heard in detail from him about the mission of the Prophet and his character. However, on his return journey, he died on the Makran coast, but then onwards, the people of Serendip adopted a friendly attitude towards Muslims." Unquote. According to Sri Lankan historians, this delegation happened during the reign of King Agabodhi III in the year 628 AD. This religious mission might have been triggered by the request made by the pre-Islamic Arab community who resided in Sri Lanka during the period of King Agabodhi III. It can be hypothesized that that community may have made a demand from the king to get to know about the new religious and spiritual developments rising up in their mother countries. One of the 10th century historical statements made by the Arabic historian Al-Balazuri clearly states that the rulers of Sri Lanka had an extremely positive attitude towards the Islamic world. It is true that maintaining such a benevolent response is an essential prerequisite to keeping the balance in the commercial pursuits. The most important period of Sri Lanka and Middle Eastern relations was during 450 years down after 750 AD. It was the ruling era of the Abbasid dynasty in Baghdad, especially during the rule of most powerful emperor Harun al-Rashid. Started in 786 AD, relations and communication between the Arabic countries and Sri Lanka ascended to its zenith. This richness of knowledge that prevailed among the Islamic Arabs about Sri Lanka during the period is substantiated by the information reported in the famous Arabic literary composition titled Alaf Laila wa Laila or 1001 Nights. For instance, according to the above work, Story of the navigator named Sinbad describes some of the accurate incidents pertaining to the system of trade prevailed in Sri Lanka at that time. Merchandises used for trade, their grades, rules and regulations governing these items, close relations between traders on trust and success of business, the rules on barter system, assessments of the value of items, commercial centers and towns and great kingdoms existed at the time are vividly narrated in that work. Most of the Muslim merchants who visited Sri Lanka seems continuously attempted to maintain cultural relations with their emperor in Baghdad to ensure their safety and the success of their flourishing economy. Caliph al-Muqtafi Billah appointed an Islamic teacher named Khalid bin Abu Bakr and sent him to Sri Lanka in the Hijra year 300, which is 912 AD. It is said that this appointment was made at the request of Sri Lankan Muslims. Khalid bin Abu Bakr died in Hijra year 317, and the Caliph sent an inscription written in Arabic letters on a stone to Sri Lanka to declare the particulars of this great teacher. This stone was placed on his grave by Muslim community in Colombo, now the capital of Sri Lanka. The text of this inscription was written in Kufic Arabic letters, and it was translated by Sir Samuel Lee, Professor of Arabic at the University of Cambridge. Nearly 26 cubic Arabic inscriptions brought to light in Sri Lanka belongs to the period from 10th century AD to almost the commencement of the European activities in the region of South Asia in the 16th century AD. The strong trade contacts held between Sri Lanka and the Middle Eastern countries are substantiated even by the archaeological evidence. An interesting assemblage of artifacts related to such affairs has been recovered from several ancient seaports and also from the key urban sites in the inland of Sri Lanka. The durable materials that are left for the study of trade are primarily ceramics. The first definite Western Persian Gulf contacts are shown by the ceramic type called black painted fine orangeware originated from the hinterland of Minab or Old Hormuz on the northern shore of the eastern end of the Persian Gulf. The presence of this ceramic type in Sri Lanka implies the existence of Gulf Sri Lanka trading network for over millennia. Archaeological excavation at Matota, situated in the maritime area of the northwestern Sri Lanka, have revealed that the ancient port there was an integral part of the trading network which links the Persian Gulf ports with India and Sri Lanka during the Sasanian period and the period of Arab ascendancy. Middle Eastern ceramics, which have been roughly dated to the 8th to 11th century AD period, and corresponding Chinese ceramics found at Mantai are thought to be indicative of an entry port at this ancient seaport. What seems to be conclusive is the continuous use of ancient Matota seaport for foreign trade and its links with the Persian Gulf ports throughout the period of Arab dominance in the Indian Ocean. Trade relations with the West Asian region during the 13th and 14th centuries marked another turn in the realm of Sri Lanka Middle Eastern relations. The Muslim mercantile community wielded enormous power in the courts of the local rulers and contributed immensely as mariners, administrators, and guardians of the seacoast at that time. The rulers benefited from the profit of trade and promoted its increase as a means of filling state treasuries. In addition, the rulers were eager to post themselves as guardians of Islam, and to do so, they gathered at their courts Muslim missionaries, scholars, and artisans from the great centers of Muslim civilization in the Middle East and the Central Asia. Muslim traders obtained special protection of law also from rulers of Sri Lanka, for their judicial trials to be conducted by themselves according to Muslim law. By the end of 13th century, a series of interconnected events originating elsewhere had their repercussions in Sri Lanka and resulted in strengthening the links between Sinhalese and the Muslims. The South Indian invasions were partly responsible for the drift of Sinhala kingdom to southwest of the country, to the consequent growth of an export economy. This increased the dependence of the Sri Lankan rulers on the Muslims because trade, which had become a national priority, was in their hands. The growth of the spice trade in Southeast Asia with Arabs and carries to meet the European taste for the Oriental luxuries strengthened their position and prestige in the island, abandoning in spices. It is also important to note that Islamic militarism reached a high steam in India under the Khaljis and Tughlaqs, and Sri Lanka was aware of the scale of Islamic military power and the stability of their civilization. This political scenario is very important to understand the significance of the diplomatic mission of King Bhuvanekabahu I, who was reigned between 1273 and 1283 AD to the Mamluk court of Egypt. The historicity of this foreign mission is archaeologically confirmed by the ancient West Asian coins recovered from Sri Lanka. Ancient coins minted in the Arabic world found in Sri Lanka are one of the reliable evidence to understand the strong socio-economic affinities maintained between both regions. A collection of coins issued in Baghdad during the period of Abbasid King Caliph al-Nazir, who ruled in Hijra year 610, and the Abbasid King al-Mustasim, found from Sri Lanka. Sri Lankan King Bhuvanekabahu I's diplomatic mission to the Mamluk court has been recorded by al-Makrizi in his book named History of Sultans in Mamluk. This mission took place on 14th April 1283 AD as recorded in the Hijra year 682 during the contemporary reign of Al-Mansur Saifuddin Qulam, the king of Egypt, in 1279 AD. Sri Lankan king's message to the Sultanate of Egypt contained details of products of the country and about the king himself. The leader of the mission sent to Egypt by the Sinhalese king was a Muslim named Al-Hajj Abu Uthman. Al-Maghrisi reported the Sri Lankan mission to Middle East in the following words, quote, Sri Lankan ambassador came with others by a Sri Lankan ship, arrived at Hormuz harbour and stayed for 10 days there. Afterwards, they sailed along the Persian Gulf, passed Basra and West, the famous harbour, and reached Baghdad. The ambassador of Sri Lanka was brought before the Sultanate and he submitted the royal message written by the king himself. Now let me quote the message by the Sri Lankan king to the Sultanate of Egypt. Quote, Ceylon is Egypt and Egypt is Ceylon. So this is the ideology. It's completely political. I desire that an Egyptian ambassador accompany mine on his return and that another be sent to reside in a town of Eden. I propose a prodigious quantity of pearls and precious stones of every kind. I have vessels, elephants, muslins, and other stuffs, cinnamon, and all the objects of commerce which are brought to you by Banyan merchants. My kingdom produces trees, the wood of which is fit for making spears. If the Sultan asks me for 20 vessels yearly, I shall be in a position to supply them. Further, The merchants of his dominion can, with all freedom, come to trade in my kingdom. I have received an ambassador of the Prince of Yemen, who has come on behalf of his master to make me proposal of alliance. But I have sent him away through my affection for the Sultan. I possess 27 castles, of which the treasuries are filled with precious stones of all kinds. The pearl fisheries are part of my dominion, and all that is taken therefore belongs to me. Unquoted. The above message contains a true picture of the grandeur of Sri Lanka in the 13th century. But time has passed and everything has changed at a rapid pace. We are now living in a world of multifaceted dilemmas. Some of the major indicators of that dilemma are the emerging environmental disequilibrium, expanding gaps in the world economies, and social unrest caused by various factors including depletion of energy sources, scarcity of clean water, rapid degradation of natural vegetation, and social isolation created by the technological advances. As a nation, Sri Lanka is also struggling with such global constraints, but her legacy of unchallengeable biodiversity, as well the memories of cultural heritage, are still preserving. Sri Lanka holds 8 World Heritage Sites declared by the UNESCO. The Singharaja rainforest, late first millennium sacred city of Anuradhapura, 5th century royal city and garden in Sigiriya, 17th century royal kingdom of Kandy are some of the sites in the UNESCO World Heritage List. Besides the rich natural heritage of world-renowned gemstones, unpolluted beaches, scenic mountain landscapes, diverse food recipes, and eco-friendly traditional medicines, and also the pleasant people are other assets in Sri Lanka. Your Excellencies, before I conclude my talk, I would like to convey a message to the distinguished audience here. It is a message which is more or less similar to the message that the King of Sri Lanka sent to the Sultan of Egypt 1100 years ago. Sri Lanka is a nation that maintains a prolonged tradition in the history of South Asia. We were one of the closest friends of the Middle Eastern nations throughout the ages. During that period, we shared trade, ideas, and traditions between us. The avenues to continue such are still open. Please encourage the citizens of your countries to visit Sri Lanka and experience her culture and natural environment. We are waiting to welcome warmly our historical friends from the Middle Eastern region with pleasing sentiments. Thank you.
I have one question.
Yeah, sure.
I saw from your presentation here, Larin, the coins.
Yeah.
Just to remark that this is very common coins used in the Arabian Gulf region.
Right.
It's Larin, it's a place in Persia, in Iran,
Right.
but it was used in around 15th, 16th century.
Right.
In the eastern part of the Arabian Peninsula,
Right.
and it was called Umlat al-Hissa coin.
Right.
So it's referring to a place in Saudi Arabia called Al-Hissa.
Right.
Our colleague from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
So it is very common coins here in the region, and Larin, the coins.
Yeah.
Just to remark that this is very common coins used in the Arabian Gulf region.
Right.
It's Larin, it's a place in Persia, in Iran,
Right.
but it was used in around 15th, 16th century.
Right.
in the eastern part of the Arabian Peninsula, and it was called عملة الحصة coin. So it's referring to a place in Saudi Arabia called Al-Ahsa.
Right.
Our colleague from Saudi Arabia. So it is very common coins here in the region, and they use it in trading between our region and with Sri Lanka and India.
Yeah.
So it used in the trade at that time, and this, they kept using this coin until around the 18th century.
Right.
Just to
right. Yes.
First of all, thank you for what you said about Sri Lanka. Which mosque have been built in Sri Lanka, and when? Mosque.
Yes. Mosque.
And when?
So there are references about the mosque after 14th century. Yes, 14th century.
In Colombo?
In Colombo, yes. So then the major port was in Colombo. So a lot of Arabic settlements located along the sea coast. Yeah. Even during the war times, the Arabic merchants maintained a very good relationship with the rulers in Sri Lanka, So Portuguese came to Sri Lanka, and one Portuguese admiral advised to the king of Kotte to stop the relationship with Arabs. So then king replied, and no, I can't do that. If I'm going to do that, I have power to do that, but I'm not going to use this power. But first, I have to ask my ministers and the people of the country about your request. So this is the reply.
First of all, thank you so much for your talk. And forgive me for my question if it's a very simple question, I apologize. But the Arabs that were in Sri Lanka to begin with, I'm sure they mingled with the Sri Lankans and they intermarried, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Okay, so does that mean that the Muslim Sri Lankan community in Sri Lanka, do they speak a dialect of Arabic, or do they speak Sinhala, or do they speak Tamil? What happened? And did the Arabic language influence Sinhala?
Yes, in Sinhala we have several Arabic words. It's derived from Arabic, but now we use it nowadays as Sinhala words. Okay, so especially in the Kandy area, the Central Highlands, there are Muslim communities. So they used Sinhala names, Sri Lankan names. So during the last 500 years, they amalgamated very well with the Sinhala community in Sri Lanka. Yes. Actually, previously we never discussed about the relationship that we maintain between the Arabic communities and Sri Lanka. So now this is the time to start a discussion about that. So we encouraged our students in the universities to focus on maritime trade and study the archaeological materials, especially from the Middle Eastern and Gulf areas. So we have a lot of things to unveil in future.
I have a question. Could you kindly elaborate the cultural influence we got from the Mediterranean region? The cultural influence Sri Lanka got, the literary and other areas.
The answer for these questions will be very descriptive because it is multifaceted, madam. So it can be reflected from the food habits, food varieties, in the language, and some beliefs. So in the 450 BC, there is a reference in Mahavansa, the great literary chronicles written in 5th century AD. So it mentions a special group of communities called Yavanas who resided in Anuradhapura city. the Yavana, the word Yavana is very close to the modern word Yonakas we use for designate the Islamic community.
I just wanted to thank you for coming. I've been to Sri Lanka 4 times.
Right.
Recently, after the Easter Sunday bombings, and this summer, I visited the Kachimalaya Mosque in, I think it's the oldest mosque, the Abrar Mosque, recently this summer, and even the Kandy Mosque in Colombo, and I feel like the Sri Lankans have been very warm and very welcoming. Even after the troubles, what is Sri Lanka doing to attract more Arabs and more tourists to the country? Because I feel like more people should be coming, more people should know about Sri Lanka. There's so many places, the cultural triangle, Nuwan Liyange. I just don't feel that enough people know about the beauty that your country has to offer.
Yes, actually we are now thinking on that, and we are doing we are hardly working on that aspect to invite the people from Middle Eastern region to visit Sri Lanka. So we need more visitors in this the present situation. So our national income from the tourism industry for 2022 is $1 billion. So we are seeking to increase that amount to at least $2.5 billion.